So my topic for the Adam and Eve conference is on Christ in evolution. And many people wonder how I came to explore this topic, because when we use the language of Jesus Christ, we think of the person of Jesus who was born in Nazareth, Bethlehem, and grew up in Nazareth. However, I've always been interested in the meaning of the Christ, perhaps even more so than Jesus, because we call ourselves Christian. So I've been engaged in science and religion now for about 14 years, and I came to realize that our understanding of God is based on our understanding of the cosmos. In fact, much of our theology grew up in an ancient world, especially in a cosmos that was fixed and stable. And so, in a fixed, stable cosmos, the disruption of the order came to be known as sin, and Jesus Christ was the one sent by God, the Word of God, who was to redeem us from sin. I think that static notion of Christ has led to an inward focus on sin and redemption, rather than, you might say, a larger meaning of Christ. The exploration of my thought took me into the world of the new science, especially to the world of evolution. I have been working with the Jesuit scientist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and his thoughts on evolution and Christianity. First of all, I think we have to say that in an evolutionary cosmos, there are no fixed essences, that everything is undergoing change and everything is in becoming. So the challenge for us then is, who is God and what is God in a world of becoming? Teilhard certainly saw that God was not dismissed by evolution as some materialist scientists might advocate. Rather, God is the power of evolution. And he called that that inner power, or that inner principle of evolution, omega. And he said that God is the one, in other words, this created world is possible because God exists, and it's God who's dynamically involved in this evolving creation towards, you might say, a fullness in relation to God that is one with God. And he called this omega principle the Christ. In other words, God united to material creation in a personal, unitive way is Christ. Teilhard was very influenced by the Scotus theologian. Actually, he was not directly influenced. He discovered Duns Scotus late in life. But Scotus's main theory was the doctrine of the primacy of Christ. And that is, whether or not sin ever existed, Christ would have come, because God is love, and from all eternity we're willed to share that love in it with a finite other. In other words, God willed an other to grace and glory even before, you might say, creation or the presence of sin in creation. So for Scotus, Christ is first in God's intention to love. And Teilhard was influenced by that idea, and also advocated that evolution has meaning and purpose because God is love, and from all eternity has willed, you might say, the Christ to come about in this creation. So he understood creation, this evolutionary cosmos, as the unfolding of Christ. Much more akin to the Greek fathers, Teilhard saw that Christ was not just a juridical notion, rather Christ belonged to the whole cosmos. And certainly, if Christ is Word made flesh, that unitive relationship with God in a personal way, then Christ cannot be just reduced to a person, but Christ is that Word incarnate, the Word through whom all things are created. So you might say every aspect of evolutionary creation is Word incarnate all along the way. So Christ is that Word incarnate that's unfolding space-time. And eventually that power of divine love, that love incarnate, breaks open in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. In Jesus, then, we see something radically new, so something like a new Big Bang, you might say, in the person of Jesus, where there's a new consciousness of the immediacy of God's presence and a new direction for humankind, and we might say for all cosmic life. So in Jesus, there is a radical breakthrough to new existence, to a new level existence. I think it's not so much that Jesus ushered in a new religion, as you might say, a new understanding of what it means to be a human person. He was a faithful Jew, but he saw that Judaism was becoming too legalistic, and really sought to bring Judaism back, or bring religion back to, you might say, relationship with the living God. So in Jesus we see that what this creation is about is not simply being saved or rescued from a fallen world, rather it is to be a reconciler, or what we might say, a whole maker. In this respect, the term Catholic is suitable or somewhat relevant, we might say, to the life of Jesus, because we can understand Catholic as being made according to the whole, rather than just sort of a universality or an abstract universality. Catholicity is, you might say, whole-making, and Jesus was a whole-maker. He healed the sick and reconciled sinners and reached out to those who were on the margins and brought them into community. So in Jesus we see then, you might say, a new principle or virtue of Catholicity breaking open, and that is to go forth in this earth community as one who's a reconciler, who brings together what's fragmented or scattered. And he shows us this path of mercy and compassion and peacemaking, not just simply as an idea, or a thought, but as, you might say, the total gift of oneself in love, which certainly is recapitulated or brought to fulfillment on the cross. So in that death of Jesus, you might say, we have a new relatedness to God, in the sense that the life of Jesus is, as he himself said, unless I go, the Spirit cannot come. So Jesus does not make himself king or idol, but he, in a sense, gets out of the way so that the Spirit can, you might say, be that ever new breath of God in our lives to help us follow that pattern of Jesus' life, to help make greater wholes in this evolutionary creation, to help evolve it, we might say. And in the resurrection, you might say, we have a new pledge of God to us, and a new existence of humankind in God, in the sense that Jesus, who, as the Christ, was that innermost center of creation from the beginning, you might say, now that center is revealed. And I think the resurrection gives us hope, it gives us purpose, and it gives us direction, because what it says is that if you spend your life in love to make greater wholes, that this whole cosmic evolution, this earthly life, this human life, will evolve towards greater wholeness and greater union in love. And I think that's what Teilhard saw as the compatibility between Christianity and evolution. That Christianity, he said, is a religion of evolution, because the very faith claims of Christianity are towards greater union in love. So I think understanding evolution and Christianity within evolution puts a new spin, you might say, on Christian life today. It is not just simply following the rules and, the do good and avoid evil, but rather it's gaining a new consciousness, you might say a Christ consciousness, what St. Paul said, to put on the mind of Christ. And that is, a new Christ consciousness that is by which we are to become more aware of our lives as unifiers, as wholemakers, and therefore to live with a consciousness of contributing towards greater unity in love. So these type of themes are, I think, important for us today. As we know more and more about science, we need to, you might say, take the best of our Christian faith and find its truth value and its goodness in light of what science is telling us about the world. And what Teilhard would say is that we humans are the arrow of evolution, and that means our choices and our decisions will affect the future of cosmic life. I understand this to mean that we can't ignore modern science. We can't, be Christians or religious people as if science doesn't exist, or as if the natural world doesn't exist. That there truly is no God without the cosmos, without the natural world, and there's no real natural world, in other words, the existence itself, without God. So the compatibility of Christianity and evolution is get serious about what we're doing in our lives, to follow the pattern of Jesus in our lives, and then to consciously go forth as evolvers, as wholemakers, as unifiers in love. And I think what we find with evolution is that all existence and all new life is costly. There's nothing new that can emerge without, you might say, suffering and death, or without the cross. So the next stage of human, the next stage of evolution in terms of humankind and the earth itself can only come about as a greater good if we're willing to spend our lives at this moment in time for that good to emerge. It cannot be a thought, it cannot be just simply a juridical notion of some sort. It really takes a participation of what we are and who we are for that Christ to continue to emerge as we go forth. And we know today from the point of science that our universe will continue on for billions of years. It's about 13.7 billion years old, and it will continue on for billions of years into the future. And we need to ask ourselves at this point, and what do we want? And what do we want to become as a humankind, as a species in evolution, and for the cosmos itself? What do we hope for? Because what even the author of Revelation says, he says, see, I promise you a new heaven and a new earth. So what we are promised is not a heaven as a place apart from earth, but the transformation of what is created reality or existence in relation to God. And so my talk will center on these points, and hopefully we can explore them and have some discussion about them.